All right, hello everyone. Eric Marks here again with FindingMiddleEarth.com. And today I'm going to be talking about what could be a little bit of a controversial subject. It's post-processing. Is there such thing as going too far with post-processing? Can post-processing ruin your images? Is it good or bad to have a style of post-processing? So we'll talk about those things. Before we get started, if you guys head over to my website at FindingMiddleEarth.com, just click the big subscribe button in the top right-hand corner and you'll get instant access to a free 45-minute video talking about all of my landscape photography gear, my camera bags, my favorite lenses to use, all that good stuff. Okay, so for post-processing, there's a million different kinds of, or a million different ways to do it, and there are a million different opinions out there on how it should be done. And before I start talking about any of this, let me make my opinion on this very clear. I believe that if the photographer likes what they're doing and it genuinely makes them happy, then who am I to tell them that they can't do that, right? Now, I might provide some feedback and say, hey, your technique is a little off. You're introducing color banding and, chromatic aberration and some bad things, some flaws in your image. But if I just don't like the color tones or something, who am I to tell them that it sucks? Because if they like it, then that's good. Very few people get into the art world to make money, right? Because if you get into something to make money, it typically means you're getting into something to please others. And art is just not one of those things. Art all kind of starts with an inner passion. So don't ever let other photographers tell you that your work sucks and then change your style a million times until the general consensus in the photography realm is that, hey, it all looks pretty good. I've seen a lot of people completely change their styles like overnight because they posted a photo on Instagram or something and it got a bunch of hate. Okay, so again, there's a difference between having a weird color style and then just doing bad technique. So I don't think there's such a thing as going over the top, but I do think there's such a thing as introducing flaws into your image by using bad technique. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. At the end of this video, I'm going to quickly post-process a photo and just kind of show you the basics and basic workflow on how I make things look good. So I think that with post-processing, there are a few key things that really stand out to people when they're looking at your work, when a viewer looks at your work, right? And that's typically composition, color, and what I normally call eye flow, which is like the shapes and the lines of how the eye kind of works its way through the image, which has a lot to do with composition. But a big thing is color, right? If we're on Instagram or any kind of social media and we see this little thumbnail of an image that's super colorful and it just kind of pops, we instantly want to click on it and see what it is. And that's why like 80% of the images on social media right now are all just like crazy oversaturated images. And again, there's professional photographers out there, like for example, Peter Lick, right, who makes his living on crazy oversaturated images. And more power to him, because if he's happy with his work, then that's cool. So let's talk about a style of post-processing, right? If you create a style, let's just say that one day you decide you want to be this like unique photographer and you want a style, you want like super contrasty images, or you want to add like a certain effect or a certain preset to every image. The problem with that is, the reason why I'm not a huge fan of caging yourself off to a style is because when you do that, you're kind of creating this like one-size-fits-all post-processing system that you're just spitting across your entire portfolio. And there's two bad things about that. Number one, if a viewer comes across one of your photos and maybe the viewer says, I just don't like that style. The location and the photo is really cool. I just don't like the style. I don't like the feel of it. I don't like the color tones, or I don't like the cold white balance, or whatever it may be. Well, then that viewer is not going to like any of your photos because that's your style. So your entire portfolio is going to be filled with that style, right? But if you have variation, well, then maybe out of 10 photos, maybe that viewer would like 6 or 7 of your 10 photos. And then you're good there. So you don't have to just immediately get rid of one market just because you made all of your photos under one style. So that's one bad thing. The second bad thing that can happen is that you're losing mood, in my opinion. You're not giving justice and proper mood to each scene that deserves it. So let me give you a really good example of this, okay? I shot a waterfall photo a few weeks ago, and it was on a very gray, rainy, dreary day. A lot of textures in the clouds, and I knew that when I got home to post-processing, I knew I that I would have wanted to desaturate the whole photo just a little bit. I wanted to bias the white balance a little bit more towards the blues and the colder tones because it was very cold out there that day. And I knew that I just wanted to give it that really moody feel. And I did that. And I conveyed that mood that I was feeling on location. I conveyed that in the post-processing. And that was a custom fit post-processing style that I tailored to that photo. But I wouldn't do that for a bright sunny day photo with big white puffy clouds, right? I would probably want to emphasize the blue tones and emphasize the sky and the happiness in the photo. So another good example is when I'm in Disney World, and I take a lot of photos of Disney World, especially long exposure night photos. I always make my Disney photos a little bit more vibrant than most of my other photos. I normally never touch vibrance or saturation, but when I'm doing my Disney photos, I use specific tools to hone in on the colors individually, and I really like to make the colors in my Disney photos pop because Disney is a whimsical, happy-go-lucky, fun, family fun place, right? So you expect it to be a little bit airy and fun and carefree and more colorful and kind of childlike. So I custom fit and tailor a post-processing style to that image because it needs it. So creating a style can be kind of detrimental to your creativity because you're just caging yourself off. You're not opening up to possibility. I try to not have any kind of pre-visualizations about any photo until I get back and I actually look at it and I sit here and I just kind of study it and ask myself what it needs. And sometimes I just experiment. I play around with different things, but never lock yourself off to one style. Open yourself up to variation. Make sure that each photo is tailored to the mood that it deserves, like the rainy, dreary day waterfall or the Disney World, or maybe it needs a black and white, or if you're in this, maybe like an old town and you're doing some street photography, maybe you'll add like kind of like a sepia vintage look. Who knows? There's worlds of possibilities out there. But so let's talk now about going overboard with photography, right? So I think, now this is just for me, if you guys love boosting the colors to 100%, as long as you're not introducing bad things into your images, as long as you know how to boost the colors with technique, not introducing color banding and chromatic aberration. If you do it well, then it can be done well. But with me over the years, I've found about the past 5 years or so, I've learned that I've kind of picked up a more, I guess you could call it, mature style of post-processing. Let's just call it that, okay? And what I mean is I have all these amazing softwares in front of me, okay? We have this whole world of softwares now. That software has gotten so good. It has so many color tools and these AI sliders and image radiance and all this crazy stuff that it can do. And amongst all that, we have the power to do anything we want to the images. But by reining it back a little bit and by pulling it back and not going the extra 30 or 40 or 50% of color that we normally would, by showing that we can control ourselves and really make the image look good without having to just kill it with color or kill it with contrast, by reining it back, I think we're showing kind of a more mature, seasoned style of post-processing. So that's the way that that's been my kind of style lately. But I refine my style all the time. I refine things and I tweak things to the specific photo. So again, like I said, if it was a Disney World photo, I know I'm going to make it super colorful and super poppy. But if it's a waterfall or a gray day, I'm going to make things a little bit colder and moody and dramatic and things like that. So I'd never try to go into a photo with a closed-minded, caged-off style, that I just have this like pre-programmed thing where I know it's going to be the contrast at this amount and the saturation at this amount. That's just not fair. It's kind of an injustice to the photo. So yeah, that's just I wanted to really convey that across to people because it upsets me when I see newbies come into the photography world and they'll post a photo that maybe is a little bit too colorful or whatever, based on whatever standards of the photographers hold these people up to, and they just rip them apart. Photographers love to hate on other photographers. Like, it happens all the time. And when I see it, I'm just like, you know what? That's not what this is about. This is supposed to be a fun community, and art is about kind of making a place in the world for your specific voice. And if they like crazy color, then let them like crazy color. Who cares? What does it matter to you? You know, we all do different things. But with my specific style lately, I've liked the kind of reined back, pulled back look. I don't have to go crazy with the color, but if the photo needs it and the mood deserves it, then I will do it. So, but I don't mean take the saturation up to 100%, but I mean if it needs a little bit more color, a little bit more life and energy put into it, like my Disney photos, then that's fine. So anyway, before I get into showing you how I process this one photo, don't lock yourself off to a style, and don't let anyone tell you what to do, okay? Again, unless it's someone trying to provide you with positive feedback, telling you that, hey, you know, the image looks good, the tones are great, but hey, you could, here's a cool tool to fix your crooked horizon, or here's a cool way to get rid of chromatic aberration. Because there is a good technique and a bad technique way of doing things. So as long as you have good technique, you know, the world is yours. Do whatever you want with post-processing. So, okay, let's hop into Lightroom here, and I'll show you this photo. So this one here is another waterfall photo that was taken on a gray, dreary day. And there's a lot of ways that I could process this one photo. Okay, so when I was a beginner, I was Mr. Saturation. That's what we'll just call myself, Mr. Saturation. Okay, so my old workflow, like years and years and years ago, was highlights all the way down, shadows all the way up, clarity, contrast, vibrant, saturation. Boom, look at that. Doesn't that look amazing? Yeah, no, it does not. It looks absolutely horrible. But that is a way of post-processing. If you look on social media, 80% of the images on Instagram look like this. They're oversaturated. But again, who's to say it's oversaturated, right? It's just oversaturated to my taste. But this is what they look like. And in my opinion, this is just kind of bad technique, because if you zoom in, let's go a 2-to-1 here. Look at all the horrible chromatic aberration that I've opened my image up to, because I've just slammed it with clarity and horrible amounts of contrast. I mean, look at this. There's chromatic aberration literally leaking off of the water. So yeah, that's just what I'm talking about when I say you can introduce flaws into your image. Okay, so let's go over how I would actually attack this. So the first thing I noticed when I was there on location, I did pay attention to my histogram. So I know that I didn't clip anything, even though it looks like the water is a little hot. So let's go ahead and lower the overall exposure of the image. I know I want to do that. Okay, let's lower it about half a stop. Then let's take the highlights down a little bit so we can get back some detail in the water. So highlights down about 55%. Now I'm a big stickler about my water. I like my water to be nice and white with some very textured lines in between. So we'll talk about that. Okay, so by the way, let's zoom in again. Look, there's still a little bit of chromatic aberration. Okay, not crazy amounts like there was, but there's still a little bits. And we can go down here and we can fix that with the, where is it at here? I know it's around here somewhere. Lens corrections, right here. So if we go to profile and do chromatic aberration and profile corrections, that should all be gone. There you go. All that little purple halos around the edges are all gone, so we're good there. Okay, so I know my chromatic aberration is fixed. Now let's talk about some possibilities here. Do we want to go crazy with the color? Do we really want these oranges and the rocks and the greens to really sing? Well, the question that I ask myself in each photo is, what's my subject here? Okay, if my subject is the trees, then sure, maybe we want the trees to be a crazy green, but it's not. In this image, the way my composition is formed, my subject is the water. The water starts up here in the top left, and it trickles down and leads you all the way down to the bottom right. So it starts top left, and everything leads the eye right down here off the cliff. So I quite like this composition. So I think I'm really going to work on making the water and then some of the surrounding rocks really complement the very harsh, well, not harsh, I guess the very direct line that the water is shooting in here. So the water is literally just this big line diagonal from left to right of the bottom to the, or the top to the bottom of the frame here. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and do some local adjustments. But first, let's add a little bit of dehaze. That's kind of like some micro contrast. We'll do that. Okay, we're not going to touch vibrance and color or saturation yet. Let's play around with the white balance. Let's see if we can make things a little colder, because this was a very dreary day. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to take the saturation. So I lied. I am going to touch it. I'm going to take the saturation and desaturate the whole image by about 5%. Okay? So we're going to do that. I might add a little bit of global contrast. So let's say 15% there. And then I want to work on the water. Okay, so let's grab a local adjustment brush, and let's do, well, let's see. What do we want to do here to really work on that? Let's take the blacks down on this brush, okay, to 25. And you'll see what I'm going to do with this in a second. And we'll take the clarity up to 15, something like that. And maybe we'll lower the exposure a very, very little amount. And what I'm doing here is I'm going to chisel out some of the bits of water where you can see the black rock behind it. And it's going to separate it from the white plumes of water. So let's zoom in here at a 1% or 100%, and let's just paint over some of the water with this brush tool. Okay, now look what it's doing to the black bits of the water there. Okay, as I'm brushing this, you can really see that detail from the rocks right behind the water, really starting to pop through the little ripples of the water there. So let's do, my computer's freaking out a little bit. Come on, there we go. Okay, we'll do this back and forth. This is a 46 megapixel image from the D850, so it's inevitable. I'm gonna have to upgrade my computer pretty soon here. All right. And what I'm doing here, again, is just separating the contrasty parts of the waterfall from the parts that are bright white. So for example, while the rainbow ball is spinning here, this little area of the water right here, I can see that there's no rocks behind it, right? It's just bright white. So I'm not going to paint over that because I know that I'm never going to reveal any kind of black behind it. I'm just wanting to paint over the bits of water where I know I can reveal some of the lines and some of the shapes and texture. So like right here, for example, I can see a little bit of faint black behind this water. And same with this, and you can see how it really creates, it's really starting to create this nice dimension in the water. You can start to see the individual little ripples cascading through the rocks there. So let's paint a little bit more up here. Let my computer catch up. There we go. All right, let's see if we can move over to the other waterfall here. And we'll make the brush a little bigger. And we'll do this here. And look at that. It's really making that part sing because there's some definite rocks behind that. Okay, let's take the flow over here and turn that up a little bit on the brush. All right, just working on that. And maybe we'll work a little bit down here at the bottom of the rock. All right. There we go. It's looking pretty good. So this is just giving you guys an example. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but that's just a good example. So let's just say that that's pretty good, okay? And let's zoom back out, and we'll do a quick before and after on that, okay? So let's just turn that off, and then turn it back on. So watch the waterfall, okay? There it is on, and there it is turned off right there, and back on. So it really added some good contrast within the water of the waterfall. Okay, and my computer is just really dragging for some reason here. Okay, so now let's add some light. Let's actually start dodging a little bit of the water here. So let's get a new local adjustment brush, and let's just add maybe a quarter of a stop, something like that, of light. And we'll zoom back in at a 1:1, and we'll just paint over some of this water here, some of the water right here. My computer will eventually catch up here, so I'm just going to keep painting. Okay, and I don't need to do a lot of dodging here because the water is pretty white because it was already kind of on the verge of being overexposed, but luckily all the detail is there, so we didn't overexpose anything. You can do this in Photoshop too, by the way, but while we're in Lightroom, we might as well just do it in here. But you can definitely create like an overlay layer in Photoshop, and you can do all the dodging there, which I do that quite often as well. All right. Oh, my iMac has about had it. I'm going to have to upgrade to the 2017 iMac, I believe. I'm going to just fit it with 32 gigs of RAM, and I'm going to have to call it quits. All right, We'll get that little piece of water right there, the little bit of foam right there. Okay. Come on. All right. Here's what we'll do. I'm just gonna do a little bit more painting. I'm gonna fast forward the video, and then I'll show you guys the before and after when I'm done doing this. That way you guys don't have to wait for the rainbow ball to keep showing up. Okay, I'm back. So if we do before, just keep your eyes on the waterfall there. So that's before, and that's after. Come on, there we go. And we'll do a before again. So there it is off, and then there it is with the dodging. So you can definitely see that by the time we did the local adjustment brush where we lowered the blacks and added some clarity to get that texture out, and then we kind of whitened and further kind of dodged the white plumes of the water, we added really nice contrast within the water itself and didn't have to do a bunch of crazy global contrast in the whole image, because we already have about 15% contrast, so we can do a little bit more if we wanted to now, but we don't have to do anything crazy like this to really, you know, just make it that insane social media Instagram effect where it just makes everything just so crazy. So let's just keep it around 25, and there's not a lot else to do with this image. I mean, you can do a little bit, so let's do something with the radial filter here. I like using the radial filters. Let's you can see there's a little bit of light kind of peeking through one of the clouds and hitting this rock here. So if we take a radial filter and we place it on this rock right here, and we can kind of turn it a little bit. Do that. Then we can create a little bit of more of a dodging effect there. So that, add a little bit of clarity. And now we're just selectively making these changes. See, we're not having to go like crazy overboard on the entire image. Make it a little bit bigger there. See how that looks. Okay, I think that's going to look pretty good. It's just creating a little bit more interest on that little rock there. Okay, so there we go. So there's that there, and I could create a few more of these radial filters and stick them all over the place where you can see a little bit of the light is kind of poking through. So for example, I would probably go ahead and create another local adjustment brush and dodge some of these gray rocks to make them a little bit brighter. And I think it would come together and make a really nice image. I think the last thing I want to do is just add a little bit of a vignette, just a global vignette to the image here. We'll make it a little bit harsh, and then we'll feather it. But I think that's gonna really sell the effect, or sell the effect of honing all the attention towards kind of pretty much right around here. This big waterfall to this rock is kind of where everything immediately goes, and then you start to notice, oh, there's some water up here, and then it kind of naturally flows down here, and then your eye leaves the image, and you're good to go. But I really want to focus, you know, the main center of attention on the waterfall here and the rock, and a nice vignette actually does that quite nicely, especially since there's this kind of brighter rock right here in the foreground. We can actually do one last thing to kind of fix that a little bit and take some attention off of that. Let's create a grad filter here in Lightroom. Let's pull it up here, and we can actually just darken the exposure on that bit of the foreground right there. Let's peg the exposure down to -30. And that's actually, that works nice. And that's nice and feathered there. Okay, and then let's just close that. So there you go. So now we did a vignette, but we also kind of helped the vignette along and added a grad filter and just really lowered the exposure on this bit here, because this gray rock was picking up some of the light that was coming through the clouds, and it was kind of taking away the attention from the bright white of the water. And the reason why I made the water so bright white is because I wanted to make it brighter than the gray rocks, so that it really zones the attention right in on this waterfall. So there you go. I think this turned out to be a pretty nice shot. If we wanted to, we could go into the HSL scale and the saturation and bump the greens a little bit, so we can make the trees stand out just a little bit there. Bump the greens and the yellows. And that way we're selectively doing this. We don't have to go to the saturation slider. And there you go. I think that image is wrapped up and good to go. It's a very pretty image, and it wasn't overdone. It doesn't have to be, you know, everything at 100% all the time. I have the power to do that, but I pulled the reins back and chose what I call the mature way out, and just left it very natural but very very honed in on the mood that I was feeling that day. Very gray, dreary day, moody waterfall, but it's still got energy to it. It's got a lot of power to it. It's a simple composition, but I really like this one because by the time your eye gets to the bottom right, you're like, oh, whoa, there's a cliff there. You know, you can kind of tell it just drops right off. So yeah, I like this one. All right, well, I didn't intend the video to drag on that long with the post-processing. I'm sorry that my computer was dragging us down there for a bit, but as always, thank you guys so much for watching my videos. And again, don't let anyone tell you what to do. Post-process your images how you want to do it. Just keep in mind that there are good technique and bad technique ways of doing things. So thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.